a turnover or whatever it was, and the offense goes and trots out. So Osweiler's got his baseball cap on, and he's got like a cup of Gatorade in his hand. He turns around to the table behind him where he's got his helmet sitting there. So he takes off his hat, puts down his cup, puts on his helmet, or starts to put on his helmet. As he's turning around, he sees Peyton Manning trot back out on the field, and the camera just catches him, kind of like Johnny always, the camera finds him on the sidelines there. He throws his hand down like, well, of course Peyton's going out there. And it was dejected. It was so funny. It's a cool little clip. You got to see it. He doesn't get mad. For people that over-exaggerate it, he doesn't get mad or anything like that. He doesn't throw a hissy fit. He just turns as he's starting to put the helmet on. He looks up, sees Peyton running on the field, and says, oh, and just waves it away like, well, of course Peyton's going out there. Why wouldn't he? I thought it was funny. Did you see that, Doc?
I haven't seen it yet, but as soon as I get back in the house, I'm going to go look at it. And
people are.
I heard something about it yesterday. So I was in the middle of doing stuff yesterday because we're showing our house to sell, to move into something smaller. So that's why I'm talking to you from the road today.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's just funny. Nothing too earth-shattering. It was just funny, the look on his face. And he's like, oh, well. And I guess now it's the big laugh in the building because they've been playing it up on the meeting screens and everything. And so it's funny now. But, yeah, hey, man, mop-up time. A buddy of mine texted me and said, man, he's a little girl. I said, no, man, forget Peyton Manning. That was his moment. Garbage time is my time, and I'm going out there to play, man. I sit here and watch you throw for 7 touchdowns a week. I'm going to get my garbage time snaps, doggone it. But anyways, funny stuff. All right, Browns, you brought it up. Let's go there. We haven't had a chance to talk. What were your thoughts Thursday night, kicking off the week this week, Browns and the Bengals, and the way they went and did what they did in Cincinnati?
Well, it's obvious that everybody automatically in the Bengals, they were just the streak. And, those of us who've been paying attention know that the Browns are a better team now than they were at this time last year and 2 years ago and 3 years ago, and that they were going to come in there and it was going to be a fight. I don't think Marvin Lewis prepared his team quite so well as he could have to handle the Browns. And of course, give Texas, they played it well. It was a short week. They worked on it. They had 2 very good spirited practices before the game. They get down there and everybody thinks that they're going to be the losers. They're going to come out on the short end and they dominate the game. Now, true, they weren't perfect. There were some spots where things could have been a little better, but I really don't say much better than they, all things considering, with the fact that they're missing a couple of key people. That was still a very good performance.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think for a lot of people that were circling that game and saying, okay, Browns will come back to reality here, and still when people say that, it bothers me a bit. Listen, this Browns team has a lot of growth to do, a lot of work to do. This is just the beginning of a window of opportunity, in my opinion, for the next few seasons, not the middle of it. But, so many people will look at the team, and as I said, they were pointing to this as saying, well, you beat some bad teams. I said, well, no, they beat a couple of bad teams. They also beat a couple of good teams. Like, it bothers me how people ignore that. Like, when I look back, and I get the luxury of recording this show every day and being able to go back and listen to what we were talking about, not just me, but you guys that talk, whether it's online or whether it's the phone calls or the guests on the phone. So I get to hear what we were all saying a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, whatever. And what you may remember thinking and what we were actually talking about sometimes are a little bit different, because there's sometimes I have to go back and go, oh man, I forgot we were even saying that. And I remember looking at the early part of the schedule and people saying, oh, well, this is a crucible here, and the Browns, look at this, they're going to be 0-3 at the bye because this is the toughest run. And I agree, because I said it, we all looked at the schedule. and said, but now people forget they ever said that. Now, suddenly, the Browns have beaten 6 cupcakes and lost to the only good teams that they've played, and that's some people's story, and they're sticking to it. And I don't understand that narrative at all. But this game with the Bengals changed that, because you can no longer point to that, because this is a team that everybody was telling me was going to smack the Browns back down to reality. This is a Super Bowl contending Bengals team. Look what they did to this team and that team and all of that. And I agree. It's a good team. I was worried about the Browns going to Cincinnati as well. So now they did that. Now people just say, oh, that just means the Bengals aren't any good. I'm like, a week ago they were a potential Super Bowl team. Now they're not any good because they lost to the Browns. At some point, doesn't that narrative have to change to maybe the Browns are just a pretty decent football team? Because that kind of wears on me a bit when you can't go look one way and then when things go a different way, change the way you looked at it from the beginning. The Browns persevered through a tough slate at the open part of the season, and they did it with what before the season started people said was a miserable wide receiver core with absolutely no offensive weapons and a career backup at quarterback. And here they sit. If the season ended today, they would host the Kansas City Chiefs in the first round of the playoffs.
And on top of that, you just brought up a great point. People I see Friday morning in my news blasts, I got something from the New England Sports Network saying, sorry, the Browns still just aren't that good. And, I wrote back to the guy. I sent him a little message. I said, Patriots' egotistical, arrogant self told the Browns wouldn't beat the Patriots in the playoffs, but they're starting to hear the footsteps now. And that's what's scaring people, that now not only are the Browns legitimate, but they're legitimate winners. Okay, they're not illegitimate winners. They're not lucky winners. Franchise now, and at least for this season. And let's see where it goes. You got to hope that there aren't too many more serious injuries, though, because you look at teams that are getting decimated by injuries, and their offensive production is just falling off. They're lucky that they haven't lost that many guys yet, and hopefully they stay healthy throughout the remainder of the season.
You know what? Let's mention this when I could. You guys that haven't heard thus far. Tayshaun Gibson, which is a little scary because of the way he's been playing back there, all-pro clip. Tayshaun Gibson and Jordan Cameron not practicing in the early part of this week, so Wednesday is always the key day for you guys that know that. Guys that don't practice on Wednesday, you start seriality of them not playing this weekend, but that's still, today's only Tuesday, so this week has just begun. Jordan Cameron, I've got in my gut as maybe 40-60 that he plays. I really could see them, especially because they've gotten great contributions from Barnage and Dre. I could totally see them being willing to take as long as it takes with Jordan Cameron and Gordon back in the same week is kind of intriguing to me too, as long as I'm getting good production out of the backups as well. But Gibson, we know what he's done so far. That, of course, hurts. You never want to see the secondary get damaged at all, but those are a couple of injury-related updates. By the way, you're listening to the Sports Fix, Dr. Football, J-Rock. We're talking some Browns, and you talk about the Bengals game, and especially the defense, the way they came out of there. Now let's look ahead. Let's not even look ahead down the stretch. Coming up here, you've got a Houston Texans team that has changed their quarterback at the bye week, which is always a tricky proposition for the team that does that, because the Browns are usually the team that does that. We know. You've got that. You've got Ryan Mallett, who has never played an NFL game. I mean, he's not. This is not a guy. This isn't even Brian Hoyer, who's got a handful of opportunities. This is more than that. So that being on the slate here, there's some weapons on both sides of the ball for Houston, but there's no excuse, and we keep talking about tests for the Browns. There's another one. There's no reason for the Browns not to be 7-3 after this game is over, as long as they show up and play the same kind of football that they played against Cincinnati.
Well, my only concern with Ryan Mallett is that because a lot of people haven't seen him since college, and we know why his draft stock dropped in the first place with the admitted drug use and a bunch of other things that went on in his past. That's not to say that he hasn't cleaned up his act. I think the time he spent in New England was very good for him to sit behind Tom Brady and learn. But this is a different situation. Although O'Brien comes off that tree, that Belichick-Parcells tree there, I would be concerned how much he's absorbed of the Texans' offense. And let's face it, they're lacking a couple of, they do still have lacking the output this year. They're really, and I saw some things earlier in the season out of a Bill O'Brien team. So, and say that I think this is a game that the Browns can win if they play the same type.
Right. And another key, too, the health of Arian from that as the week goes in, just like we talk about Jordan Cameron. But as you know, groins, those things are tricky right there. That's something to keep an eye on, even if he does play during the game as well. But if he does play, Foster is one of the best running backs in the NFL. One of the leaders in yardage this season. I mean, he was right up there neck and neck for a minute with DeMarco Murray before Murray just kept going up and up and up. But, I mean, Arian Foster, it's one of the reasons he's banged up is because he's been so high usage this year. He's been at a high clip compared to his career of how much usage they've gotten out of him. And I like Alfred Blue, but there's a big drop-off when you go from Arian Foster to Al Blue. So that's something else to keep in mind because the last thing they want to do is to go in with a new quarterback in his first game and have to be down to your backup running backs as well. So it's going to be key as we get later in the week, getting some clarity on whether or not Arian Foster play. Arian Foster is a huge weapon. People talk about Josh Gordon, same thing. I mean, that's even a bigger weapon because to me, a powerful all top league running back like that is as big or bigger of a weapon as a wide receiver because to me wide receivers there's more of them. The elite running backs are fewer and far between, man. I know some people feel the exact opposite. Some people feel that the elite wide, to me I'd say it's a passing game. As the Browns have shown, you can get passing production a lot of different ways, and I guess you can with running backs too. I'm a fan of the running game, perhaps, so that's why I lean so much more towards those elite run things that I worry about. What do you think? A week from yesterday, by the way, no matter whether the Browns win or lose, they also add something that people didn't even know was possible at the beginning of the season. Do you think that I mean, a lot of people are saying, well, they're looking at Gordon coming back in two different camps. Either he's going to come back and set the world on fire, or he's going to come back and do nothing, because he's been out all season. I think just the threat that he's going to come in and be Josh Gordon is already a piece that adds to this offense, regardless of what he actually does statistically.
Yeah, I think he's going to be, even if he's only used as a decoy in the scheme this week, and they give him a week or two.
No, he's
to get
not back until
no.
They got one more game. Yeah, one more game. You're talking about
right. I'm talking about
right.
The week
Yeah,
he comes back.
Yeah.
Whether or not they plug him in right away and he gets 6 or 7 targets, or whether they use him as a decoy. Like you said, the threat of him being back in uniform and back on the sideline. I'd be scared if I were an opposing team's defensive coordinator or special teams coordinator, and I had to figure something out. I would love to see them go back to using him on specials a little more, because even if he's not ready with the pass routes, just the fact that you have a pair of legs back there like that and a pair of hands that could catch a kickoff and maybe, set it on and go for the 6, and put up 6. That's a huge threat right there.
I'll tell you what, Bill. I've never really thought of it like that before, but it's like, hey, you want to make up for the beginning of the season here? We need some help running these punts back, and you've got a pretty good set of hands and a pretty good set of legs. Maybe you can help us out here a little bit. And no, that's not. I don't know if that's something the Browns would even consider, but hey, that's something that they might want to. That's not the worst idea I've heard for sure, man. It's definitely better.
Yeah,
we're not going to field it at all, or it's definitely a better option than let's let Jim Leonard go back there and see what he can do, because those options aren't working out too well right now.
Yeah, Leonard's got a lot of heart, and and I remember him from his time
yeah,
with
that's
the Jets
a good way to put it.
But he's got a lot of heart, but he's not necessarily the right call back there. You know,
Right.
maybe he's the guy who should be back there when a team's trying to coffin corner it, and he can protect between the ball and
Well,
the
that's
goal
what
line.
that's basically
But,
his job. Yeah, that's what he's back there for,
Right.
is to field fair catches and to make sure that they don't screw up too bad, except he decided to run around with a loaf of bread over his head last week and fumbled it. But yeah, he's basically the safety back there to make sure that we don't screw this punt up too bad.
Right, and, you know, obviously Gordon is a better weapon to have back there.